Hello, everyone. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Artistically Black, the continuing conversation of the expansiveness of the Black community, the love and labor of art, and the connection between the two. I am your host, Dannielle Hutchinson, and I'm so delighted that you decided to join me today. I have a great show for you. A returning guest, my first returning guest. Yay me. My guest today is the Chief Executive Dreamer of Jurisprudence LLC. She is the author behind The Briefcase of Jurisprudence and Jurisprudence Goes to Law School. And she's here to discuss her new book, President Prudence, JP Leads the Country. Please welcome Jessica Childress.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me again, Dannielle. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I'm so excited that you're my first return. I have a returning guest. Oh, excellent.
Thank you so much. I had such a great time with you last time, so I can't wait to dive in
Oh my
again
goodness.
so much.
The bar is so high. Oh, I'm ready. Okay. So first, I'm so glad to have you back. And I want to say congratulations on your second book.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's not always an easy thing, especially following up the first one. I have to say, I ate it up. It was great. I was so excited when you said that you were writing another one that I was like, oh, well, I obviously must read that one too. So congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The second book was something that was in my head from the time that I started writing the first book. And it actually has been, you read the first book. That was my first baby. She came out in 2014. And now, however many years later, 7 years later, this one will be released in 2022.
Okay.
So 8 years later, another one is coming out. So we can talk more about that process. But this has been a book that has been in my head, and it finally is coming to life.
I read this book. And as soon as I got to the end of this book, I was like, oh man, I want like 20 more pages of this. This is so good. I got to the end and I was like, oh no, there are no more pages. What will I do?
I love hearing that. I love hearing with The Briefcase of Jurisprudence. And just to give your audience an overview of JP. JP is an 11-year-old lawyer. In The Briefcase of Jurisprudence, the first book that came out in 2014, she was fighting to get kids the right to vote. So she's an 11-year-old lawyer. Her biggest obstacle is making sure that the mayor of the District of Columbia, where she lives, is not reelected. And she has good reason for making sure that he's not reelected. And that reason is that he does not like children. There are rumors that he has a criminal past. He's just a mean guy. So she's an 11-year-old lawyer. She's already passed the bar exam. She has this all-star group of best friends who are all lawyers. And she says, let's do something. And that something is using the 14th Amendment to argue that kids are equal under the law. So the 14th Amendment, that's the equal protection. There's an equal protection clause in the 14th Amendment. She argues that the equal protection clause means that kids are equal under the law and that kids should have the right to vote. And so that is what she does. And that's her biggest obstacle. And we're left with wondering, what is Juris going to do next? And what she does next is in President Prudence, the new book that's coming out in February of 2022.
Thank you so much for sending me an advanced reader of this book, because I was like, oh, I have to read it before we chat because I must know all of the things. I know all of the things, audience. I know them before you. So how did this process of writing this book differ from writing The Briefcase? Because you said that you've had it in your head. So how was this different?
Yeah, so this was a cathartic process. That's the best way that I can describe it. The Briefcase of Jurisprudence, that came about, and I think writing comes about magically. There's a book called Big Magic by, I believe it's Elizabeth Gilbert. She's the author of Eat, Pray, Love, and she talks about the magic and creativity. And for the creatives listening, for the artists, you know what I mean by this. You can't force a book. You can't force a story. It just has to organically evolve. So the Briefcase of Jurisprudence, it was just a moment of magic, I think, that happened. And as I get inspiration from nature when I'm walking, I've always been a reader. The books in my life have influenced the stories that I tell. My own life influences the stories I tell. My desire to influence the next generation as a lawyer, that influences the stories that I tell. So the Briefcase of Jurisprudence, I wanted more kids to see themselves in literature. I wanted girls of color to see themselves, Black girls to see themselves in the books and the stories that I told. And I wanted them to be heroes, and I wanted them to change the world, be change makers in these books. So JP, she starts off, I wanted her to be a lawyer, a real lawyer, not a lawyer who says, I'm going to be a lawyer in 10 years. I wanted her to be right now. And so I wrote about that reality as to, what she would do if she were an 11-year-old lawyer. In many ways, I felt that that process was easier the first time around in 2014 because I'm a lawyer. I remember what it was like to be a kid dreamer. I think in many ways, I'm very much like JP, dreams big. The next book it's a President Prudence. It's a fantasy in some ways. She is an 11-year-old running for president. I mean, the first book is certainly a fantasy in many ways because she's trying to change the law to get kids the right to vote. But I really had to suspend a lot of so much reality in the next book. And I think that really underscores the entire theme behind the book is that we have to dream so big that sometimes we do have to suspend reality, even our own realities. So in this next book, Juris is not as confident in President Prudence. She's very confident in the Briefcase of Jurisprudence. If you've read the book, you see this very confident girl who's 11 and she motivates her friend. She's the one who says, community, believe in us. We are going to show you that this is the reason why kids should have the right to vote. And she gets her community behind this very big mission. In President Prudence, she has a dream. And I think we can all identify with having a dream, but not believing in it enough internally to execute that dream. And that's really, that process was a process that I had to really think about. I mean, even in my own life, dreams that I've had that I haven't executed for whatever reason, internally or externally, I had to think about what that felt like. And it's something that I think we all deal with. Creators, entrepreneurs, we all often deal with something called imposter syndrome. And that's what Juris is dealing with right now. She is getting motivation from her friends, from trying to get that internal motivation to execute her dream. So the process of really talking to Juris and having conversations with her friends is far more intensive in this book. Having I'm thinking about who Juris was in the last book, what's happened that has made her have all of these doubts. So it was much more of a conversation and also a reunion of characters in this book. The characters have evolved, their personalities, different sides of their personalities are coming out. So I think as a writer, I've matured. It's been 8 years. So there have been other Jurisprudence books that have come out, picture books that have come out. This is the next chapter book that has come out. So this is really a nice reunion of all of the characters in a way that you can really see the way that they're engaging and the way that they've changed from who they were 8 years ago, even though they're the same age. They're still 11 but they are now more mature. I think they're more nuanced. They're more holistic. So the process, I enjoyed it so much, but it was just a different conversation.
I love that. I loved the you spoke about how Juris is not, there's a little bit of self-doubt in this book compared to the Briefcase of Jurisprudence, where she knew what she wanted. She knew that, this is what I'm gonna go after. How did you come to include that kind of vulnerability that we see in this one, because she is taking something, a grand task on, running for president. How did you include that? Why include that vulnerability and self-doubt?
I think it is a conversation about, and I think it's been named and identified, a big conversation in leadership communities
Mhm.
about how we feel as women, how we feel as girls of color, as women of color in large spaces taking on big dreams. And I think it's very, very real. And it's been identified as imposter syndrome. And
Mhm.
the conversation has become greater around this topic. And so when I took on this task, I wasn't directly trying to talk about imposter syndrome in a book, but I wanted to be real with the fact that big dreams often do are accompanied by doubt. And
Mhm.
so realistically, when you are taking on something big, and even in my own life, I really shoot for the stars, but there often is, oh wait, do we do this right now? Do we wait? How do we do it? Are we ready? And so all of those voices of doubt, if you allow them to creep in, they can really stop you from
Mhm.
achieving something great. And so I wanted to just be real with that very real reality that she is a dreamer inherently. And that's the essence of jurisprudence. She is a big dreamer. But also, she is facing something that is so grand. And maybe even in writing this was a topic that I'm like, okay, I don't know how to run for president, but what would you do if you ran for president? So, what would the doubts be? So, it was a big concept to take
Mhm.
on. Even in the briefcase of jurisprudence, when I first started writing, some of the people who read the book, some of the critics, were like, I don't know if I can get behind this idea of an 11-year-old lawyer. What does this actually, can we really grasp this topic? I've been at book festivals and parents have said, I don't know if my kid can really, grasp the topic of an
Mhm.
11-year-old lawyer. That might be too big of an idea right now. And so the idea of running for president, it's a huge idea. So tackling the reality of big dreams and what might come along with big dreams was something that I wanted to do. But I really wanted to impress the message that even though you have these doubts, you have to push forward. You have to continue to execute with tenacity and go through your process of dealing with those doubts. But at the very end, make sure that you continue to persevere so that you can get to that end goal.
That's great. That is beautiful. We were talking briefly about, before we came on the air, about JP's utopian world that she lives in, and I love it. Um, I want to say I love the inclusion of a female president preceding JP. I hope I didn't spoil anything. I mean, the title of the book is President Prudence, so why do that? Why include a female president, which is something that, in reality we have been looking forward to.
Indeed, indeed. During the election cycle, and I think that might have been the inspiration to really get this, to make sure that this is out there, because
Mhm.
I've always wanted jurisprudence to run for president, even before we had a Vice President Harris. I wanted her to be in that role. But seeing Vice President Harris run for office, I think that really inspired me to say this story needs to be told. We need to encourage more images of
Mhm.
girls running for office, taking leadership, even if it's not on a national stage, even if it's not even in local office, but running. If you are a kid being a leader at your school, being a leader in Girl Scouts, being a leader in your religious institution, wherever you can find leadership and make change and see the need for making change, be a leader in that space. And
Mhm.
that story, I mean, I was just so inspired by our total election cycle last year. Just how can we continue to give images to girls that make them want to lead? And so the image of we haven't had a female president. We have not
Mhm.
had a woman president. And hopefully we will soon. I think we are much closer to that reality than we've ever been in the history of our country. But I think that when we continue to give images, make girls see what they can be, I think that changes the narrative and inspires action.
Do you yourself have any aspirations to follow in JP's footsteps? They're very big footsteps.
They are inspiring to me for sure. I do not have at this moment any aspirations to run for national office at some point, perhaps a local office. I'm not sure, but I am always, civically engaged and service oriented, and so that is I will always have a heart of service, and in that service I'm not sure where that will lead, but I will always make sure that I'm serving. And yeah, that's a great question, but not right now. Juris inspire me though. She does. As I'm writing this, I'm thinking, wow, this is this is just an awesome. Sometimes you live through your characters,
Mhm.
and it was an awesome process that she goes through to take on that national leadership role.
Was there ever any, were you struggling with a decision whether to do, for her to run for Congress or for her to be a Supreme Court justice? Was it always president? That's the next step.
It Supreme Court justice actually is one that I was thinking about, and maybe not even a Supreme Court justice, but another judicial role. But I
Okay.
did the thought pat crossed my mind at one point. Oh, Supreme Court or in another judgeship, and She's still
Mhm.
11 years old. She has
Oh.
her entire life in front of her. I thought about. I think I didn't really delve into a congressional role for her, and that's still a possibility. But that the thoughts were she's going to be a judge in one of the next books or the president, and she is she I know well the title gives it away, but I think her process is more of the story here.
Mhm.
And she does take on this role, but I think the story is what does she have to go through to get there? And then once she's there, there's a little hint of what she does while she's there.
Mhm. Is there so the version that I got, is that the final version, or is there another version? Like, is there, because I feel like I have an advanced reader. So is there, like, are you adding to the book still? Is there a final draft that will be printed?
There is a final draft that will be printed. So you have one of the early advanced reader copies. We'll be making a little bit of tweaks, some tweaks, but not substantial tweaks.
Okay.
So there will be formatting changes and some photos will probably be changed. But you have the story. The story will not change substantially. There might be some minor editorial changes, but otherwise you have that story.
Well, that's good because it's a good story, friends. It is a good story. We talked about the speeches in this book, and one of the speeches that stood out to me, and you'll talk about another one later, is the one that Prudence receives from President Miller
Mhm.
about not giving up, about letting the challenge inspire you. Where did that come from? Where do those words emanate from?
Sure. So President Miller, she actually, if you take a look at her picture and my picture, this is actually me talking to Juris if I'm envisioning it as a writer, but this is me talking to Juris and she is talking to her as a little sister. Like the younger
Mhm.
version of who she is to say, I want this challenge to inspire you. I want you to look at fear. She's telling Juris what she does when she sees fear. And she says, you look fear in the face and say, no fear. This
Mhm.
is who I am. That let me tell you, let me believe in who I am. Let me tell you who I am so that you will go away and I can keep walking. And so that is inspired by just what we face on our day to day. If you take on a big challenge, there is fear. And I think that's really the concept, the underpinning of imposter syndrome. There's fear that's accompanied, that comes
Mhm.
with imposter syndrome, but you have to keep going. You have to address it, identify it, and keep on going. And as creatives, we are creating something that people may not like. They may not emanate in with them, may not resonate with them, but we have to keep going. We have to keep putting our art out into the world.
Mhm.
And might have fear surrounding just creating. I think it's hard to, I am still a practicing lawyer. I think it's harder to write a children's book than it is to practice in many instances, because you are really trying to put something out there that has never been put out there before. And you have to tap deeply into that creative process. So fear came along with writing. It comes along with writing. When you start typing and you say, oh, no, that's not good. I don't like that. That's not really, I'm not feeling this today. I'm starting over. But you have to keep going. You really have to keep on.
Mhm.
That it's an iterative process. You have to continue to push through any fear that you feel. So I think all of these speeches have come from lessons that I've learned in life or through people in my life that I respect. You'll hear a speech from Granny. Granny is very much like my grandmother. I mean, I speak I speak in this book as if my grandmother were just talking to me directly.
Mhm.
I believe this is some version of a speech, the one that I'll read to you later. It's some version of a speech my grandmother has actually given me or gave me when she was alive.
I love the familiarity of this book. It does feel very warm and as informative as it is, it and following the journey, it does feel very comforting and letting people know that it is okay to have fear and to have that self-doubt and to work through it, because there is someone that supports you, that loves you, that appreciates everything that you do. And I appreciate that writing and that feeling. What message do you most want people to take from this book?
This book is that it is okay to feel that it's okay to feel fear. It's definitely okay to feel it, but don't let that paralyze you. Keep dreaming big, and not just dreaming big. It's not just the dream, but it's the doing. And
Mm-hmm.
that is very similar to the message in the last book, and maybe even all of the jurisprudence. She is a dreamer. So in every jurisprudence book, she is executing a dream in the holiday book for kindness. She
Mm-hmm.
wants the community to be kinder. And so she is getting her community to sign kindness contracts, to be kind. That is her dream. And it's somewhat, it seems like a small dream, but it's a big dream. In the first book, getting kids the right to vote, big dream. There were people who didn't believe in her, but she kept going. This dream, maybe the biggest that she's ever dreamed, and one that she doesn't know is actually a tangible dream. But she continues to keep going, and she gets help from people. I think Juris hasn't really gotten help from people in the
Mm-hmm.
past. She's very independent, but she actually relies on her community. She relies on her village, and her village is the village that uplifts her. And I think that we can all, if you're a doer, if you're a creator, sometimes it's hard to ask for help. Juris, in this case, she does rely on her friends, her family, even the current president of the United States, to get that encouragement that she needs to keep going. So I think this message is one that both kids that will resonate with children and will resonate with adults, because these are human feelings that we all feel. And I want people to come away from this book feeling empowered to go forth and conquer their dreams, no matter how large or small they are.
Great. I like the introduction of the people that she relies on, the friends that she reaches out to, her campaign team, and I like the balance that you were able to capture between chasing this really large dream, but still having that childlike wonder and the curiosity and the I just want to be 11 years old in some instances. I literally just want to go to an amusement park. And yeah, I know what my job is, but I just want to be a kid for 6 hours.
Indeed.
How do you keep that balance? How do you make it work?
That is something, and I mean, that's a note that I will take in the margins of the book when I feel like JP is being too serious. She's still 11 years old. She still wants to go horseback riding. She still wants to go to the amusement park, shopping with her friends. And she has very whimsical friends. Like there's one character in particular, Izzy, who is
Mhm.
very lighthearted, jokes all the time, doesn't take anything too seriously, and really brings Juris back to because these Juris is very cerebral. She's always in her head. And so Izzy is the lighthearted friend who says, okay, we're 11. I want to go shopping. She's just always making jokes. Sometimes, I mean, I don't think I'm the funniest person, but sometimes I laugh at Izzy's jokes. So she's the person who brings some comedic relief. She's also the person who I think makes sure that the kids remain kids.
Mhm.
Book. So she's a nice foil to Juris. JP loves being outside. She loves riding her bike. She loves being with her friends. So just the idea of what kids would do if they were together in a room coming up with ideas, what their language would be. I think I'm always thinking of let's make sure that the book isn't too heavy with adult problems, but
Mhm.
also what would be important to a kid. And so that's where you hear the voice starting off of a character who isn't visible in the book. She doesn't have a physical presence, but she sends JP a letter.
Mhm.
And Camilla is the kid who expresses what kids want. And JP, that's that spark that sparks her desire to execute her dream of being the president, because she says, JP, we would like you to run for president.
Mhm. That letter is so inspirational, so powerful, and it's a great way to start that book to get us going on our journey. What do you think JP's advice would be to the 11-year-old that's out there that's getting ready to chase their dreams?
Start. Start now. Don't and I think that's the hardest part of anything, starting. So she would
Mhm.
say, start and keep going until you finish. Very, very simple advice, but often hard to follow. But it is to begin that dream. And one of the things that Granny says in the book that is a recurring theme throughout the book is to stand. There is the theme of a starting line. There is a theme of a race. And Granny, and I'll read the speech later, but it is stand in your shoes. That is what she says to Juris. Stand in your shoes, girl. And I think this idea and this image of standing is starting. When you're sitting down, you're not moving, but when you're standing, you have started this process of motion. And once you are standing, you might take a step. And if you take a step, you might walk, and then you might run, and then you're on your way.
So is there a book three planned? Because I got time to read.
Dannielle, tall orders here. There is a book three. There's not a book three planned. There will be a book three as long as I can think and just scribble down notes and have thoughts. I will continue to give Juris adventures to share with the world. And so there is not a plan yet. There, I want to just enjoy this part of her journey, but there will be at some point. And I don't, just talking right now gives me ideas, but I have to, that magic spark, when that comes, I will start writing and get it out there. But the magic, you have, I always carry a piece of paper or a journal with me, because it's so important, or even my phone, it's so important to capture that moment and that thought when it comes. So when we get off of our call, I will write, just nudge, because you never know when that, even a message, even a speech. I think this book, when I started really digging into the content, it was a speech that made the rest of the book radiate and grow for me. That's where, and the speech informed the rest of the book.
That's great. That's beautiful. Well, I will look out for book 3. I'm happy to chat about ideas of what I think JP and her friends should tackle next. That would be great. So when can people purchase this book?
Right now, it's currently available for pre-order on the Prudence website. The book will be released to Amazon on President's Day 2022. And I believe that is February the 15th or the 22nd. I'm sorry, I don't know that date for sure, but President's Day 2022.
I love that. Look at you putting things together. I love that.
You can always remember the release date. Just Google President's Day. I will Google President's Day and figure out exactly the date, but it is I'm looking forward to President's Day 2022, because that is the date that it will be on Amazon, and you can go on Amazon, purchase it there, but it's available for pre-order now on the website.
Awesome. So could you share a little bit of Granny's words for us right now, and as we wrap up?
Absolutely. So Granny is a source of strength for JP and has always been. And my grandmother was very much a source of inspiration and strength for me. When I was in law school, my final year of law school, I lived with my grandmother, and she always spoke words of encouragement to me when I was feeling afraid about an exam or about finding a job after law school. My grandmother, she was the person who would always tell me to stand in my shoes. And the dedication at the beginning of the book, it is to stand in your shoes. And so at this moment, JP is talking to her grandmother. An old friend has visited JP from an old book, and I call him a friend, but really he's a nemesis. And he scares JP. He really scares her and makes her believe that she should not be running for re-election. And so if you know this character, he's the character that we love to not like. His name is Sylvester Sullivan. But he comes out of the woodwork, and he really, really scares JP. She's very emotional. She leaves an event that she's going to. She's just walked off a stage, and she's crying, and she doesn't want to go to her next event. And she goes to her grandmother's hotel room where her grandmother is staying. And she tells her grandmother what's happened. And this is what her grandmother says to her to encourage her to get back out there and keep going. Her grandmother says, "So, I want you to stand in your shoes, girl. Do not slump, do not bow, do not shrink, but stand in your shoes. And always remember who you are. As I always tell you, you're my horse, even if you never win a race. But you've won many races, and I know that you will win the race to become the first 11-year-old president of the United States."
Oh my goodness. I want everyone to go out and get this book right now. You can pre-order it on the Prudence website. Please do that right now. Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to chat about your new book. I'm very excited to have you back on. We can chat about some other things. We can chat about your law life and what's going on there. This was great. Thank you so much. I want to leave us with something that another inspirational woman from this book, President Miller told us to tell fear to leave me alone. I am strong. I am smart. I am powerful. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Dannielle. Thank you for having me. This has just been excellent. And I just appreciate your audience. I appreciate you and your team. So thank you again. And I hope everyone enjoys the book. And I hope that you were inspired by the messages in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you. And if you have time and your schedule and you want to go see a wonderful show, you can join us at the theater for Luchadora. Tickets are on sale now. Get your tickets at atmtc.org, or you can call the box office at 301-634-2270. Luchadora plays through October 31st, 2021. Come and see a wonderful show. And if you would like to donate to Adventure Theater, you can donate at atmtc.org. We'll see you next time. Bye, friends.